this premise of the melting pot, if you melt a potato, you don't have a potato anymore. I don't want that. America has given itself both an opportunity and an immense challenge. Some black people just can't talk about slavery. White historians are beginning to say what black historians have always known, which is that this way of life, the Western economic system, is built on slavery. None of this would have been possible without centuries of free labor. Black labor. American culture is the first one to make money to feed off the destruction of a culture. So you look at a ship on the Atlantic Ocean with 200 or 300 Africans, sometimes mostly children, making a 3.5-week voyage. That's a metaphor for building America in a place that's been wiped clean of its original inhabitants. Capitalism has to find something to feed on. And it's sort of sucked us dry. It's moving over into Asia. The feeder has to find a base, like a science fiction kind of image. This is our human rights issue because the internet is so big, and it has to stay free and democratic.
I had to really dig deep to understand both sides and to forgive. Seeing what the Americans did in Vietnam destroyed my motherland. We had to flee my country and all the destruction both to the land and the people. And then on the other hand, the communists took my dad away from our family for 9 years.
So once I got the thread, I knew I was trying to work through the question of suffering and what it's worth or the reason for it. Well, it's one of those poems that I wrote in an associative way. As one of my teachers in Taiwan said, we don't have grammar, we have structure. There are ways of saying things. I'll say, 明天我给你打电话. Or I could say, 明天打电话我要给你. And so I just turn it around. So that whole process has informed, especially a associative way of writing, I think. Here's the mind and consciousness, which we really don't understand. We can't define it, but we have it. Inside the mind is language. It's like a fire inside the center that informs the mind from a center. And in terms of literary artists, writers in all genres, the poets sit closest to the fire, at high risk.
I was thinking one of just, the sound, the sound of a motor that an ere can be. But I was also thinking about propellers as machines that help to move us forward. I also think of poems as moments of exploration, heightened language, and an art that pushes you into and towards discovery. My grandmother, when I was young, she would give my brother and I this hour of quiet time, and I would go out. She would watch her novelas, and I would go out in the back and I would write. She gave me a big pad of paper and pens. She was like, and your project is to write. And I would write, and then I'd come back in and I'd share that after my hour of quiet time.
How old were you?
Like 4, 5, 6,
Fantastic.
You're gonna use your voice and people are gonna listen. Do you dream, or, that is mind-blowing to me. And I also think that also shapes, if you're attentive and vigilant, your own kind of thinking seriously about your poems or poetics, or how much what other people say affects your art making, and how much are you gonna say, well, actually, I know nobody liked it, but this is really important to me, and this is why.
I was thinking of the name of the bomb, Jumping Jack, and when I think of jumping jacks, I think of childhood innocence, and at the same time, this bomb, and when I read about it, what the bomb was capable of doing, and the destruction, I wanted to juxtapose those two images together. I have to face this, I have to see what's going on, and I wanted to understand what my father went through. As I was writing these poems, I was able to process the history. In a way, when we write history, or when we create art or write poetry, we create that history. It's our interpretation. And I wanted to create it in a way where I can bring something positive, something that transcends time, and suffering is compassion. And that's one thing I try to create in my poems. You can empathize with the humanity of the situation, no matter how horrible and terrible, if you can have some compassion for the people there. What a poet can do is move someone in some way. I break that down for them. There's no one form, or it doesn't have to rhyme. There's some poetry in song, there's some song in poetry, there's some music in poetry, there's art. They're kind of a mix. And I think it helps to include instead of exclude, because in my poetry I incorporate art in my images, as much as I can, and the music of the language, the rhythm. And that's one reason why poetry has so much power, because it can touch your heart and your soul, and that's the place inside of us that is capable of transformation. And that's why just hearing a poem or going to a reading and having a poem really touch you in that way is the seed of transformation, because your soul and your heart is the area of potential transformation.